that bar.
That extra gear, the first 3 steps.
Huge strides in the performance.
That I might not be the player I am today.
All right, welcome to another episode Behind the Gear, and we are privileged here. We're lucky. We got Tyler McGregor with us, and Tyler, for those who don't know, is the captain of the Canadian national sledge hockey team or para team, and an unbelievable story, Ty. And first of all, what's it like being the captain of a national team? I mean, that's got to be kind of crazy, no?
It certainly is. It's such an honor, and I was fortunate to really learn from some people that I really look up to. And to be quite honest, I mean, I think when you're younger, you just grow up falling in love with the game and just wanting to play. And I know for me, like, my dreams as a young kid were just about making the NHL or winning a Stanley Cup, playing for Team Canada. It wasn't to be a captain of a team. But it's such an honor when you really look back on Canadian hockey in general, and the men, the women, the sledge players that have wore a C and everything that they've done and accomplished, and who they are as people. It's such an honor to do it, and a lot of responsibility, and something that has really helped me grow as a person in many ways. And I've been lucky to have so much help around me and support in learning and growing into that role. But it's something that's so much bigger than just yourself. And I think, not to say that I was a selfish, 25-year-old or 26-year-old guy, but it really helped me grow and change my perspective on what I do, and really my perspective on the world in general, and thinking about how I show up for other people as well. And so it's been an incredible experience, and something that I'm honored to take on as a responsibility to have an impact on myself, my team, and the community in which we exist.
No, it's cool. And I think, like, a lot of times you go through minor hockey and, you become an assistant captain or a captain. It's like, oh, it's cool. It's an honor. It's really cool. But when you're the captain of like a national program or national team, it's a little bit different, right? Like, not that you're watching everything you're doing, but at the end of the day, like, I'm sure people recognize you. They know who you are. You're kind of, you're somewhat of a, not to grow your head here, but you're a little bit of a celebrity. Even I remember seeing you. I didn't know you. I knew of you, but I remember seeing you on posters. I remember seeing, you know what I mean? It was, which is awesome. Like, it's so cool. But to your point, it's got to be a little bit humbling at times too. You're like, man, like, I'm, kind of not the face. I don't want to put too much pressure on you, but you're one of the guys, one of the athletes that's kind of the face of your sport, which is really cool.
Well, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. And I mean, like, especially, I mean, there's so many layers to it. Like, as you touched on, it's a national team, and it's so much different. You made the point of being, in minor hockey. I was just the same thing. I was assistant captain and captain of minor hockey teams, and it's a men's team, and so that the way in which you operate is obviously a lot different. And especially with our team, the dynamic is interesting, where we're all across the country. And so, that's another kind of challenge in which, we have to deal with. And so that's been a learning experience. But I think, being a captain of a national team, and this is where I learned so much from, my teammate and our former captain, Greg Westlake, and even the captains before them. But I think, so much of the role and responsibility is literally how you show up every day, and how you present yourself, when you show up to training, when you show up to workouts on and off ice, those little detailed habits, how you show up and present yourself in a professional manner, in conversations like this, every interview, regardless of who it's with, or whatever, is so important. And I think at the end of the day, especially stepping into this role, that's what I've learned, is that it's something that's kind of all encompassing, which can be very humbling, as you mentioned, and overwhelming at times. But at the same time, something that's pretty special. And as I said before, that's very much bigger than yourself, than myself.
Totally. No, I mean, I've never been in that kind of a stage or that big of a situation, but I totally agree. And one thing we talk about a lot too is, especially going back to minor hockey, you slap an A on a kid's jersey or a C on a kid's jersey. Well, how many coaches or parents help those kids become good leaders? Because I think every single person can be a leader in certain extent. Some are strong leaders, some are your captains, no doubt, for sure. Some are just quiet leaders, silent leaders. Even the players that are maybe a little bit more of a follower, I think they have a bit of a leadership role with their brothers or sisters or cousins or buddies at certain points, right? So how much do we invest as coaches and parents in teaching our kids how to be leaders, how to, exactly, you said, how to show up looking not like an unmade bed, but having your, just your look together and working hard, and maybe you're having a bad day, but you're still putting it in. And, how do you teach that? And I guess the question for you is, did you find, like, along the way, I know, and I'm going to get to this in a second about kind of some of the stuff that I've heard about you from personal people that know you, but along the way, was there a little bit of mentorship like that when you were a captain or assistant in minor hockey, or was it just kind of, you were a good kid, you were a hard worker,
I mean, so yeah, kind of exactly at that time. And I think honestly, the more the mentorship and really, diving deep in terms of, how I can develop those leadership skills has really happened within the past year or two. Because to answer your question, like, I think, like, every leadership position that I was in as a younger kid was more so just based off those character traits that, like work ethic and caring for people, just, especially, I wasn't putting extra effort in to develop myself as a person, necessarily, or being mentored. And I think that's something that I'm starting to learn. And I think, it's starting to evolve within the hockey world, I guess, within the past few years. But yeah, I mean, it's something that, and you also touched on, the ability for everybody to lead. And I think that's one thing that we're really trying to emphasize within our team and our program right now, is that everybody is capable leaders. Everybody has leadership abilities. And the thing that's important within a team environment is to have an understanding of everybody's strengths. And to be quite honest with you, there's some things that I'm not good at. I'm not the guy to give a pregame speech or to get the boys hyped up in the room before the game. But that may be somebody else's, a strength of somebody else's. And I think it's so important within a team environment to be accepting and to be understanding of everybody's strengths and to utilize those. And I think that's what I'm really starting to figure out is, at the end of the day, a CNA is really just, something that you put on a jersey, but everybody has an important role within the team. And it's so important for, especially what I'm trying to do right now is to make sure everybody feels comfortable within their role, and to bring that to the forefront. And I'm going to give an example. I saw a clip from NCAA March Madness of this guy. This player, I think he played for Abilene Christian, and obviously they upset, who was it in the first round? This guy hasn't played a minute all season, and didn't play a minute all season, but he was the most excited player on the bench. He was cheering for everything his teammates did. And I think, like, that role within a team has so much importance. And sometimes, I think it's important to bring that to the forefront and not to diminish it at all. I got a little off track there.
Oh, it's great, man. I love it. But I think you bring up a really, really good, like a really important thing for any coaches or teammates out there, or anything, even parents, like that player who didn't play. I'm going to assume that over the course of the year, the coach or the captain or somebody went up to him and said, "Man, listen, you're part of this team. Like, you are you get us fired up. You're taking care of the music in the locker room. Like that gets us going, man. So like, I know you're not playing on the court, you're not scoring baskets, but at the end of the day, like you're a huge part of this team. It's just like those guys that play maybe a bit more of a grinding role and maybe only play 3-4 minutes in a hockey game, but they change the tempo by laying a couple big hits and protecting other guys. And, maybe they're not scoring the big goals or they're not on the ice for the last minute of the game, but they're still a big part of that team. And I think having captains like yourself or captains that are inclusive, right off the bat, allow those players that maybe don't have the skill that you have or some of these other really good players have, but allow them to feel like they are part of the team. Because we've all been on teams before where maybe we're a bit behind. Like I remember when I first started playing AAA, I was the 10th forward out of 10 to make the team. Like I was the last guy. I was the grocery stick. I was the last guy to go on for a shift to take over a winger on a line. It was brutal, right? But and I felt these other guys were really good. It's minor hockey, the not that you got your captains coming up to say, hey, don't worry about a buddy at that age, but at the same time, it's like, I knew where I sat and some days I felt like crap about it. I'm like, I'm brutal, man. I gotta, so that forced me to work hard, but having that inclusivity and those coaches that are like, no, man, we're all part of this, I think is huge to bring a team together for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's critical. And like thinking about, the championship teams that I've been a part of, and I'll use this because I've been in both situations, especially on the national team. When we won world championships in 2013, I played 2 shifts.
Really?
And so I had to be that guy on the bench that was jacked up. And mind you, I was 18 at the time. I was a young guy. I was just excited to be there. But that was my role there. And then when we won world championships in 2017, it was the complete opposite. And I remember like, one of the things about that, and one of the most exciting things, was coming back to the bench, and we played an unbelievable game as a team, but we kind of just rolled, like we really shortened our bench, and so one of the most exciting things was that every time we'd come back, the guys who weren't playing would be so fired up, and it was just, I mean, like, as a player, it was fun to come back to. It kind of, it really made everybody a part of it, but especially as someone going back out there, it got me fired up. And I think, the important thing there that I learned was the value and importance of having supportive teammates like that. And it really inspired me to kind of find out new ways that I can, kind of emulate the value that they serve in those characteristics.
Oh, you're right. Cause we've all been in those situations where maybe you're a top 6 forward or top 4D and you're in a tight game and in a competitive environment. And I don't want to say doing this in Adam and Pee Wee, but you get up to like junior and stuff like that. And you're rolling 2 lines and you come to the bench, and there's nothing worse than coming to the bench and seeing 2 guys in the middle moping and talking to each other because they're not playing and they're pissed off, where you come back to the bench and guys like, man, keep it going, boys, doing awesome, and it's a game changer. And even though, and I've been the guy in the middle of the bench being a cheerleader, and man, you're pissed off. You want to play. You're like, that guy sucks. He just turned it over. I should be out there, but you want to suck that up a little bit, take, swallow your pride a bit. And are you here for yourself? Or are you here for the team? And I think that's kind of one of the biggest, biggest things. You mentioned something earlier though, about, being in your driveway and being on the outdoor rink or whatever. And, thinking of scoring a goal in the Stanley Cup Finals and playing for Team Canada. I mean, I think I just did that this winter. I was doing the same thing, hoping I was still going to make Team Canada. But I think it's something that I think every Canadian boy and girl that loves hockey has dreamt about putting on the jersey, the Canadian flag, or playing college hockey, or playing, national league, playing for the NHL. So I think it's something that's obviously ingrained in us at young ages. Now for you, obviously healthy young boy playing hockey at a high level. I mean, you played AAA, pretty much all the way up, and then, coming up. So what was your upbringing like, I guess? Now you're from Forest, Ontario. And for those who don't know, it's a small little town just outside of London, probably 40 minutes outside, on the water, kind of in that kind of, that's a little bit of cottage country area. Cool spot. What was it like growing up there? What was hockey like there? What was there an outdoor rink situation? Was there a lot of ponds and stuff like that to play on?
Yeah. I miss it there, to be honest. I live in Toronto now. I love that I had the opportunity to grow up in Forest. It's don't miss it so much in the winter, but I honestly don't even experience winter in Toronto, especially living in a condo. But growing up in Forest was awesome. There was, around town, different community rinks. There was, I mean, they would always, just one of the older gentlemen in our neighborhood would always freeze up a tennis court and make a rink there for every kid that was around. But my dad would also build a rink in our backyard, and our house backed onto a bunch of fields. And so we had plenty of space to build a rink. And so I always had a rink in my backyard. And then on top of that, our house was 400 meters from the arena. And so I basically grew up a rink rat, and then, you know, in the summer I'd be in my garage like all day. And so that was my, you know, kind of my early childhood. I grew up playing in Forest, and then I believe, what was it? It was, I can't remember. It was minor Pee Wee. I started playing AAA in Sarnia. I guess at that time, they were called Lambton Junior Sting. And then so I played AAA for basically the rest of my minor hockey career. My minor midget season, I had moved to the Huron Perth Lakers. And so that season was kind of cut short. But yeah, I mean, my childhood was, especially in the winter, I'd spend so much time on my rink. And, you know, I think there's so many parallels to most other young Canadian kids. I definitely feel fortunate that we kind of had the space and the access to be on the ice so much. And at the same time, one of my best friends actually lived like right across the street from me, played AAA as well, Cody Trowell. So we lived across the street from each other, would practice together literally every day for hours on end.
That's awesome.
And so it was nice to have, you know, another guy like so close to push you and challenge you. And yeah, that's essentially my upbringing in the sport.
It's awesome, man. Now, spending that many hours and all that time on the outdoor rink, was it because mom and dad were forcing you to go out there and practice, or was it because you loved it?
Yeah, it was always because I loved it. And you know, it starts as this sport that you fall in love with for what it is, just, you know, for the sport itself. And then it grows into a passion and an obsession and, you know, something that you love because you get to be a part of a team. You know, you fall in love with the sport itself, and then you fall in love with the team aspect, the camaraderie. You fall in love with, you know, I think, especially when I think about my life, and hockey really offers me a way to express myself creatively and as a human being, and to push myself and challenge myself to grow in new ways. And we just talked a lot about leadership and personal development. And so I think that's, you know, one of the things that hockey does for us all. And I was never forced into that. It always, you know, my parents always gave me the opportunity to try, but never pushed me in one direction. And I'm sure if my mom had it her way, I'd be a doctor or something right now. She always emphasized education over hockey. And you know, on top of that, I was given the opportunity to go and play whatever sport that I wanted to. And especially as a kid, I played a ton of golf in the summer. I still golf as much as possible. You know, I played basketball, volleyball, everything. And so, no, I was never really pigeonholed into playing hockey and putting my sole focus on sport. It was purely my choice, and especially, you know, like I'm sure there's many hockey dads. I had a supportive one who also loved the game as much as I do, who was there to help and support me every step of the way. And so, you know, I feel lucky that's, you know, the type of supportive parents I had, that whatever, you know, the choice was mine. If I wanted to play hockey, then it was my choice.
Awesome.
And so I feel blessed about that.
Oh, it's great. And I loaded the question up because I was basically going to bury your parents if they were forcing, but I knew that wasn't the case. No, it's funny, man. Cause even like the outdoor rink, and I don't know if you've ever built one or if you helped your dad build one as you got older, but I put one in my backyard, and we don't have a huge backyard. It was a tiny rink, but I have two young kids, an 8-year-old and a 8-year-old boy, 7-year-old girl. And it was 100% just for an outdoor activity with what we're going on with COVID and stuff. I knew there was going to be a lot of opportunities. So anyways, I put it in, and selfishly, I was like, man, this is what I wanted when I was 13. Now I'm from Sudbury, Ontario. So we had outdoor rinks like in a lot
everywhere.
of neighborhoods. Yeah. So it was awesome. Right. We were very fortunate. But man, I loved it. And yeah, it's a little bit of work for sure, but I'll do it again every year. And it was, and to your point, like, so I told my kids when I put the rink in, I'm like, you guys do not have to use this at all. I did not build this. You don't feel obligated to use it, but if you want to use it, it's there. And whenever you guys want to use it. And my daughter used it quite a bit. My son was on it probably, religiously, like almost every day, a couple times a day. He loved it. And it was all just his own merit. And I think, for a lot of parents out there, you said something that I love. You said the game kind of grew on you. Like it starts off as like, this is exciting. It's new. You're getting better. You're learning new things. You're getting better on your feet. And then you kind of become obsessed with it, like you said. And then you learn about teammates. Cause that's 7, 8, 9, 10. You don't really know much about teammates and hanging out. You got buddies, but then you understand the team and the boys and the girls, and this is my crew. And then that becomes a whole other obsession. And then, so to your point, like it kind of grows in levels. And I think, man, if you can just teach your kids at young ages to just enjoy the process, like enjoy the game, enjoy putting your skates on, enjoy going to the rink where it's not a grind. Your parents aren't, dragging you there. Then that's the number one battle. And then whatever happens after that happens, and you kind of keep opening doors if they love it. And if they don't, then that's fine too,
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I think that's exactly it. Like,
yeah.
I mean,
now going into what happened with the switch, I guess, from Lambton to here on Perth? And the only reason I'm asking is just because like minor hockey, you've got, kids that'll move from Forest to Toronto to play in the GT, or you got other kids, you know what I mean? So like, was there a significant reason? Or I know that I believe that you had an opportunity to play up at one point too, correct?
Yeah. So the prior season, when we were in Lambton, my teammates, or two of my line mates, were Matt and Ryan Rupert, twins.
Yeah.
And so our major bantam year, we played minor midget. And so that previous season, we played minor midget together. And then for our actual minor midget season, our plan was to all go to Elgin. And so at that time, I don't know if the rules are still the same in the Alliance, but you can only take 2 imports. So I was the third. And so we tried to go through the approval process, and it didn't get approved. And so they're a package deal, obviously. And so I ended up going to here in Perth, and that's where I ended up. And honestly, like even though I didn't get to really play in that season, I mean, I broke my leg in the first game of our season in Toronto, September 11th. So like, the very start of the season. So I really didn't get much of an opportunity to play with that team, but just going through, what I did, and, how supportive these people that I just met and how important they became in my life immediately. I'm so thankful that I ended up there, or that life took me there, and I met those people. And but that's kind of how I ended up in here in Perth.
That's cool. That's really cool. Yeah. And I know Matt and Ryan, I've been on the ice with them many, many times, and obviously played in the night for the Knights and stuff. And so they are kind of a package deal. They don't go many places with each other. So you were the third man out there for sure. Now let's talk a little bit about what kind of that season. So you end up kind of getting ready for that season. You're probably excited. It's your draft year. You're, one of the players that's kind of, touted and probably on the draft list at the start of the year, and hopefully now have a good year, and see what happens with the draft. Now you break your leg, and I know I'd read some different things and some stuff that you talked about, but it wasn't really a hard hit. It wasn't anything. It was just kind of a collision, and then next thing you know, you end up with a broken leg.
Yeah. I literally just ran into right in front of the net, just collided with another player, like very innocently. I was kind of turning back up ice as we were regrouping the puck in the neutral zone, and so that's how it happened. And honestly, I felt it right away. And so, but kind of to preface that, I was, for the past or for weeks before, probably 2 or 3, I was kind of getting, like some shin splints, having some pain. And so obviously kind of just attributed that to maybe overtraining, whatever it may have been. As there's a hill at our high school that I always used to run, and so I kind of just thought it was self-inflicted. And so right after that hit, it was super innocent, and I immediately knew I broke my leg. And so we were in Toronto at the time at a tournament, and so went to the hospital immediately after, and I ended up having surgery within about a week after. And so that essentially took away most of the season. At least it was 3 to 4 months recovery kind of at best. And so it was obviously disappointing. It's a pretty important year for young kids, and I was disappointed in that, but at the same time, kind of, at that time, it was only 3 or 4 months. I was still at least thinking that I was going to regain my health pretty soon and get back to it. But yeah, to come circle back to the question, it was just super innocent hit right in front of the net, just kind of knee on knee, and knew right away.
Yeah, that's nuts, man. Now, so you get your break, you kind of figure, okay, I'm going to rehab this, let it heal. Bones take about 6 weeks. It'll heal. I'll start getting back on it, start, trying to train again, get strong. And then I'll hopefully be back by the end of the year and finish out the year. So during your rehab and stuff like that, and kind of as you were going through it, you were starting to skate again, correct? And you were kind of getting ready to potentially return, right?
Yeah, I was walking within 3 to 4 weeks and skating within 6 to 8. And now, mind you, when I started skating, there were still weeks of recovery left. Yeah. But I was at least, able to slowly build up. And while this was happening, I started to develop a mass right on the site of the fracture. Okay. And so over time, that kind of started to grow when I got back to activity. And so by the time about Christmas rolled around, I was skating. I was kind of, back into shape, skating, obviously without contact still. But, at least skating with pace again and feeling stronger. And then, at that time, the mass was about the size of a tennis ball. And
just sticking out the side of your ankle area.
Yeah. Really? Right below my knee. And so, okay. It was an absolute nightmare to get shin pads on.
Was it sore? Did it kill, or was it not too bad?
So no, by that time it wasn't sore. There wasn't much pain. I remember though, when you touched it, it was super hot. It was always super hot to touch. Yeah. And so what happened is doctors just thought, because it was so hot to touch, doctors thought that was, naturally just extra blood that was kind of gathering around the broken bone, trying to help heal. And so they that's kind of what was expected. And so, fast forward to January of 2010, where we were about to start our first round of playoffs, I believe was against Windsor. And so that was my, kind of final appointment with my orthopedic surgeon to go, get an x-ray and kind of get a note to return to play. And my x-ray showed about 2 inches of my bone were missing. And so, that's kind of when everything spiraled. And the next day they were like, okay, this obviously isn't right, which explains the mass and everything that's going on. And, the other thing too is over the Christmas holidays that year, I'd gotten really sick for 2 to 3 weeks. I had strep throat or something. or like bronchitis or something terrible, but like my immune system was just like absolutely shot, like not a normal round of strep throat.
Right.
It was just, something was different. It was like I couldn't fight it. And so, and then, January of 2010, like they were like, okay, something's wrong. And had a biopsy the next day and was diagnosed with spindle cell sarcoma, so form of bone cancer.
No way. That's crazy. So now they obviously had a rod in your leg, right? For that bone, like just like
Yeah.
set it and stuff. So you were basically not knowing, but you're skating on a metal rod
Yeah.
in your leg. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So that, that's how I was able to still
But
skate.
still, man, that's still scary in itself. Because they tell you like when like so not that this is anywhere even close to what you went through, but I broke my leg 2 years ago now. 2 years ago. I had a tibia plateau fracture. So I ended up with snowboarding, not even fast. I was going through like a little bit of an icy area. Tree was there. I jumped out of the way and hammered my knee off the tree. Kind of stood on it. I thought it was like, when you block a shot, it's a bit of a stinger. You're like, okay, I can walk.
Yeah.
So you're trying to walk it off. I walk out, put my board back on. I go to my buddy that stopped. I'm like, I think I broke my leg, man. He's like, seriously? I'm like, look in it. Nothing's sticking out. I'm like, walk on it. So I board down the hill, not hard, just like really like slow. Get down the water. Long story short, I ended up getting this thing like that day, got surgery, came back to London, got surgery that day. They're like, this is bad. I'm like, oh man. So they put a rod in it. But what I'm getting at is like, they told me, do not put any weight on this because if anything goes wrong, you're going to shatter your bone, like scare the crap out of me. So like for you not knowing, obviously you don't know what you don't know, but man, like there could have been some major, obviously,
I know,
like just like something bad could happen there for sure.
Well, geez, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, and the one thing I really do remember about that is what was really concerning at that time was when like my edges, so skating itself would kind of be pain free and wouldn't be worrisome, but anytime I was on my edges, at that time, like, with the rod and especially towards the end, like that's when I'd kind of feel a little bit of pain or like, my probably the rod like shifting within my leg. And so yeah, you're probably right. Like it wouldn't have been ideal to somehow break it. But
yeah, because like when you were turning tight or pivoting or something like that, that's stress on that leg. Like we don't think about it at all as hockey players, right? It's just like whatever. But when you've got an injury like that or something, you could I could totally see that because your bones are moving, everything's moving around.
Yeah, everything's shifting.
Right. Yeah. So they diagnose you now. I mean, obviously the leg break. Let's go back to that quickly. So you break your leg. What was that like to go through? Even just I know you're young. You're at the time 14, 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You find out your leg's broken. What was your mentality right away when you found, okay, your leg's broken, you're going to be out for 4 months? Was it, okay, I'm going to get, as soon as I can spin a bike, I'm spinning a bike. As soon as I can do a push-up, I'm doing a push-up. Like, what was your mentality? Or was it kind of like, oh man, and sat back for a couple of weeks?
So initially it was because, I mean, what happened is we went to a hospital in Scarborough right away. Mm-hmm. And like, I remember I sat and emerged for 6 hours and they didn't even give me a painkiller. And so we were so frustrated. Like it was such a long wait, and I'm sure everybody can relate to, being super impatient in emergency rooms. And then the other thing was like, they couldn't schedule me for surgery right away. And so the thing was they just put me in a full leg cast immediately. And at that hospital, they said, okay, six months in a full leg cast. And, fortunately, on our team at the time, one of my teammates his dad was a doctor in Stratford. And so he said, no, like there's other options. There's just better solutions than that. And so when I got that news, I was pissed, obviously, like 6 months in a full leg cast, like no movement, no activity. That'd be the season right there. And then you start the recovery. Yeah. And so I remember hearing that, I was just like, I was, frustrated, disappointed. And so as soon as I was referred to London, they gave me the option to obviously have surgery, and they laid it out for me. They said, you can be walking within 3 to 4 weeks and kind of, build up from activity from there. And I was like, at that point, I think like anybody, any, competitive young kid would, I was like, okay, that's awesome, because then your mindset shifts to, just taking it step by step and getting back to it. And I think that was the first time that I really dealt with a significant injury in my career. And knock on wood, I haven't really been back there or had to. But I realized the importance of taking care of yourself and taking care of your body in the recovery process, and really the mindset that you have to adopt. And that's, like we talk a lot about the process, but I think that's one thing where you really have to put emphasis and really, adopt the right mindset in dealing with that. But yeah, I think like my mindset at that time was, okay, like I'm going to do whatever I have to and try to make this as speedy and seamless as I possibly can, in getting back to being a healthy athlete.
Oh, definitely, man. And I think that's the biggest thing, because I don't know, up to that point, I'm over 40. So at 40, I broke my orbital bone, I broke my leg, and I broke my foot, and all different times over a 3-year span. And I played hockey for years, played pro, never broke. I had like little injuries here and there, but I was very fortunate.
Yeah.
And now, now I'm falling apart. But up until that point, like if somebody broke an arm or a leg, and probably like you too, I've just been like, hey man, it's okay, buddy. Like, no problem. Not really knowing, because I never went through it. And then when I broke my leg, I was like, whoa, man, I felt so bad for everybody. I've only said, hey, it's okay, you'll get through it. And instead of being like, hey, do you need anything? Hey, do you want to pick, like, because I remember my family left the day after I got back from surgery. I was at home. Got up in the morning, tried to, like, on crutches, couldn't put any weight on my leg, trying to help with lunches, whatever. But you go from being an active person like you were as well to like nothing. Now you're just like, I remember sitting on the couch, everyone left the house, and I didn't have water. I didn't have food. I just didn't think of anything. I'm just like, hey, what am I doing? Like, how do I do this? Right? Like, so you got to learn how to like redo things. And again, I'm not comparing my situation to yours, but I remember right away, my whole mentality went to like, hey, I got to get better. Like I got to stay, and I got to stay moving. I got to stay active. I would walk with my crutches. I would like go for a walk. I had rashes all under my arms, but I'm like, I don't care. I got to stay doing something, because I'm going to go crazy. And I really appreciated the mental part of it, because you can go to dark places really quickly when you're by yourself, just thinking about stuff and kind of woe me, poor me, you know what I mean? So I think it's really important. Like, and you said earlier too, just having a support group around you, like having family and friends and coaches or buddies, whoever, reaching out, just even a text message sometimes saying, hey buddy, how you doing? is a little bit of a bright light,
100%. Yeah. I think, you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like and that's another thing that maybe I don't even, think of often, but it definitely made me more empathetic to, and compassionate to, to people dealing with injuries. Like, even teammates, like, sometimes and especially, I'm sure you're the same, but sometimes I had to remind myself not to do too much and like not to rush getting back on ice, and to really be patient with the process. And I think, we all kind of try to do that, and so I think it made me more aware of, trying to be that supportive in that way with teammates dealing with injury, and making sure, once again, that they still feel included. And I think that was another eye opener for me, and it is, dealing with any injury, when you're away from your team, it's unless you've done it, it's difficult to understand. And I think, as I said, I've been lucky not to deal with anything too severe, other than, little stuff here and there, but being away from the team for a while it's challenging, in addition to, dealing with an injury. And I think it's important, as a teammate, to make sure that, as you said as well, like reach out or offer support in whichever way you can.
Well, it's funny, man, because I've talked to kids before too, or a player gets hurt on their team or whatever. And And I've coached teams where I've been like, hey, has anybody reached out to little Johnny? And like, no, I haven't. No, like, boys, send him a text, man. Get him in the
Mhm.
group chat, or invite her to our bowling event, or, we're having a team dinner or whatever. Make sure that she knows or he knows that to come, because you're right. It's one of those things where it's easy to get lost in the shuffle because everyone else is playing and practicing and doing school and getting ready for all their stuff coming on and events or whatever. But that poor person is rehabbing or, working in the trenches away from you. But man, it is important to like reach out and make them feel like they're included. And, we talked about it already, but like those leadership skills, those are small
Mhm.
little leadership skills that fourth liner or captain could do. That's really simple, really easy, but it definitely separates you from the pack, because most of the kids and people aren't doing that. They're not reaching out to people. We're worried about our own
Yeah.
bubbles. We're worried about what we got going on. And, oh man, I failed that test. And, oh, I didn't score yesterday. Like, instead of thinking outside the box a little bit sometimes, and like, man, they maybe need a text. They maybe need a drop off Tim Hortons or whatever. I think
Mhm.
it's really, really important to keep that in mind.
Yeah, those things go a long way. And I think, honestly, it's something that I'm, guilty of or at times, and something that I really, view as an opportunity to grow, or, an area where I can grow. And I think many people are the same. Um, I think we always sometimes are hesitant to take that action, or send that message or whatever, but it really does go such a long way. And I think it's extremely important.
Oh, totally. So now you deal with the break, you're on your way back, and then you find out that, oh man, I've got a form of bone cancer. I'm 15 years old, which let's be honest, man, at a teenager age, you're bulletproof. Like, a broken leg, fine, I can deal with it. I'm going to get back and I'll be better than I was before. But, you think of that C word, it's like, wait a sec, are you sure these are you sure you got the right guy here? Like, I'm 15,
Mm-hmm.
man. Like, so what was that process like? And what kind of led into, I know, losing your leg was obviously down the road a little bit, but I mean, crazy turn of events from just having a broken leg. You're going in thinking, I'm going to get my ticket to play again. And then
Mm-hmm.
the world gets reversed on you, a little bit. So what was that whole kind of process like to go through?
So right away, yeah, so actually, basically how it transpired is like, I had my biopsy. I was diagnosed, and honestly, the first week, especially, um, whether I don't remember it at all. Like, whether it was denial or painkillers, or whatever it was. It's such a blur.
Yeah.
So the way I remember it is, uh, 5 days later, I finally remember having a conversation with my parents and asking them, what my results were. And and that's the way I remember it, or at least interpret it. So, and I remember at that time, again, you mentioned, like, as a 15-year-old, you feel bulletproof, and that's honestly the way that I felt. That I was so naive to what was really going on. And like, I think when it really started to set in was when I had so many more tests, because obviously my tumor was growing for months. So they're almost certain that my cancer had spread to my lungs. And so I remember, days and days of constant tests to really, like, determine what my protocol would be.
Great.
If I'd have chemo, if I'd have surgery, radiation, whatever, what kind of chemo, like. And so that's when it really started to hit me, was when, we met with so many different doctors, had all these different tests, and like, literally, as a 15-year-old, like, all of this is just being thrown at me. And at that point, I was just like, holy shit, like,
Totally.
what, like, something that you have no experience dealing with. Most people don't, especially not at 15. And then, at that time, what I will also say is, like, my experience with cancer had really not been existent. I had two grandparents who died of cancer when I was like 3 years old, so too young to even be around, or remember what that was like. And so, once again, like, I did kind of feel bulletproof, because I was just like, I heard my prognosis. It was going to be 8 months of chemotherapy, and at that time, I hadn't learned of of an amputation. And so initially I just thought, okay, let's do what we got to do. I'll be healthy within the next year. And as disappointing as it was, because at that time I knew that my hockey season was for sure done. My OHL draft was for sure passing me by, and that was obviously pretty difficult to come to terms with. But at the same time, I was still going to have the opportunity someday. And so, it was kind of a catch-22, because it scared the hell out of me. But at the same time, I was 15. You're not thinking too deep when you're 15 years old.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
For sure.
Right. So.
Yeah. Well, no, and I think that's, I think that's fair, for sure. I think, our life experiences aren't that great at 15. We've been in our family bubble for the most part, right? So
yeah,
something like this is, man, beyond even comprehension for most people, like at that age, So when they actually did finally come to you and say, listen, like these are kind of our options, and this is, what we're gonna have to do. What was that whole? And you may not remember, because I could just imagine being in a fog for, I don't even know how long I'd be in a fog for after hearing the first prognosis or diagnosis, and then going into like, hey, we're gonna have to potentially, remove a leg. Like, what was that?
I remember, as far as I remember, I believe like my meeting with my orthopedic oncologist was, during my first actual treatment, which was about 2 weeks after my initial diagnosis. And I remember, and like you kind of touched on it, like much of that time in the hospital really does seem like a blur, and is a blur to me, other than specific moments. And I do remember this one like vividly. But meeting with my orthopedic oncologist, who's from Mount Sinai here in Toronto, and he came to London, and he just, he just laid it out for, both my parents were with me in the hospital, and he said, Tyler, to save your life, we have to amputate your leg. And dealing with that was by far the most difficult part of the whole thing. And we just talked about kind of like, what my mindset was after my diagnosis. Well, I think I've said it in many different interviews or conversations or whatever it is, but I was far more scared of that news, of hearing that I was going to lose my leg, than I was of cancer or of dying. That scared me far more as a 15-year-old who just loved to play hockey. And that's all that I wanted to do. And so I remember hearing that, and I started crying right away, like immediately. It was just devastating. It was heartbreaking. It was everything you can possibly imagine. It felt like my life was over. And I kind of believed that, to be quite honest, as someone who, as I just said, just wanted to play hockey. And so from that, I really don't remember much of the next few months, other than it was really weird to hear that news and then just wait for it to happen. Right. I think those couple months are really, really quite a blur to me, because it was, it was almost like I was just waiting for the end. And so, it was almost like, once I actually had my surgery, it was almost a relief. And I remember crying going into the operating room, and for the next week, I was really devastated until I got home. And then it was almost kind of like, okay, we can move on. We can start to, move on in some way, or move forward. But I think, like especially now reflecting on it, like those couple months waiting for my surgery were just like, oh, And those were probably the most difficult days.
Definitely, man. Yeah. Because so from the time they told you, or the doctor told you that we're going to have to remove your leg to save your life, it took about a month or two until you actually went into surgery then?
Yeah, so I had to finish two full cycles of
Okay.
chemo, and so basically, like, yeah, so it would have been 6 to 8 weeks, because I'd do 3 straight weeks of chemo and have one at home.
Okay.
So
Wow. That's nuts, man. Now, how, like, what kind of emotions were you kind of feeling? Like, I don't want to get too, but like, were you pissed off? Like, was it like, why me? Kind of like, I can imagine what I would go through. I would be a train wreck, man. Just some of the stuff that
uh,
I'm thinking and talking about and just like mad at the world.
I definitely, yeah, I was having all those feeling all those emotions. Like, it was sadness. It was, yeah, a lot of questions of why me. And as selfish as it sounds, uh, I had my surgery on the day of our OHL draft, and as selfish as it sounds, that's exactly some of the things that I was asking myself. Like, why am I sitting in this hospital bed? And reflecting on it now, I was 16 at the time, so I mean, I feel like I'm a more mature person now, and maybe wouldn't have these thoughts. But it it broke my heart to be, laying on a table in the operating room when my best friends were getting drafted and taking the next step. And you know that quite honestly broke my heart. It made me sad. It really made me question where to go next. But at the same time, I don't want to sit here and sound extremely selfish, like I was just thinking about myself, because I was also very happy for
No, but I think that's
them, on
normal,
a
man. I
personal
think
level.
that's I
Yeah.
think that's normal. Like, yeah.
But I mean, you really start to question literally everything. And you know I will say it wasn't all bad, because I think there were certainly moments where I started to think about how I can still have an impact on this game. And I started to think about things like coaching,
Yeah.
or being a general manager, or whatever it is. I started to have those thoughts as well. And so as hard as it was, um, I, I think the belief that I was still going to be involved in the game, and the belief that I was still a hockey player on some level, and was still going to um, get through this. I think that conviction is, as much as the doctors and the chemotherapy and the support system I had helped save my life. I think that belief and that conviction is equally as important in terms of my ability to move forward. And really, I think when you're down and out, those are the things that keep you going.
Yeah, just having those little thoughts, like you said, of coaching or being involved in the game, or
Hmm.
yeah, I totally agree with you, because you got to find anything to hold on to, any kind of branch you could find, right? Now, was there
Yeah.
a moment or two moments or anything after, kind of leading up to or after, that kind of helped change that mindset a little bit? Meaning talking to somebody, or even, how did Paralympics, how did sledge hockey come into your life, or how did that get introduced to you? Like, was there something that kind of gave you that? Because you're a very motivated young guy, obviously, with trying to get drafted. So that kind of was the carrot for you, I'm sure. And then once you got drafted, I'm sure it was going to be, okay, I want to play in the NHL. I want to play in the OHL. I want to. So you always kind of had carrots throughout your whole, minor hockey career, and then moving on. So now, how did you find that carrot, or who kind of helped you over that hump a little bit, or helped you kind of refocus a little bit?
So there was a few different moments that I can think of, and one was actually the resident doctor who did my surgery. He's from Pittsburgh, and he was doing his residency at Mount Sinai, and so he had the same type of cancer that I did, and relapsed 7 times. Also
Okay.
had his leg amputated, and decided to go on and become an orthopedic oncologist. And
So
so
wait, so the doctor that you had went through what you went through.
yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
And so I remember this specifically because, you know, that was a resource that I wish now I took even more advantage of, like, you know, like trying to, you know, search for his or ask for his wisdom and advice more so than I did at 15, 16. But I specifically remember, like, just, you know, little conversations and just having him as someone who'd been through something similar, and he was an example, obviously, of someone who's gone on to do incredible things. But I specifically remember because, you know, these are the thoughts that go through a 15, 16-year-old's head. But, like, to be quite honest with you, like, one of the things I was most concerned about outside of hockey was just being a teenage kid in high school, you know, a single guy. I was worried about, you know, I was having insecurities about confidence with girls and stuff. And so, you know, one of the things I remember most was going into the operating room before I was given an anesthetic. He was just, you know, he showed me a picture of his beautiful family of three young kids and just said, "You have nothing to worry about." And I remember, like, you know, I was having some serious doubts and insecurities about what my life would be like, what my personal life would be like after surgery. And so that, you know, that was one moment where I was just kind of like, you know, it offered me the reassurance to, you know, that everything was going to be okay, that life would go on. You know, let alone he's obviously, you know, did years and years of school, a very intelligent and successful person. And so, you know, in addition to that, that was inspirational for me. And then on top of that, another, you know, kind of pivotal moment was I was actually referred to the sport of sledge hockey. I remember there was a lot of people who reached out and kind of pushed me in that, didn't necessarily push me in that direction, but referred me to sledge hockey, a sport that yeah. And I remember one of my spring hockey coaches was Greg Bignell, and he had known at the time the coach of the national team, Jeff Snyder. And so I remember, you know, he was kind of someone who said, "Hey, you should give this a shot," because, you know, I told many people that I wanted to continue playing or find a way to play at the highest level and be a competitive athlete. You know, that spirit within me wasn't gone. And so, you know, I think for me, that was probably one of the, you know, the people that really helped me take that leap and get started and jump into it. And I'm so happy I did. But there was a lot of people in addition to him that they were just like, "Hey, you should try this out. This is legit." And yeah, you know, I was so blessed to have, you know, so many people around me and such a supportive system. And I think, you know, that's kind of a testament to the hockey community as a whole.
Well, yeah, and you mentioned even going from, you know, Lambton to here on Perth for your draft year and a whole new set of families and players. And I'm sure some of them you knew just from playing against each other, but just how accepting, you know, that hockey community is. And I think it's the same in a lot of sports too. And we're talking biasly about hockey because that's what we're both involved in, but I agree with you. I think for the most part, you know, all those families are very accepting, and it's like you're part of another family right off the bat, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, it's huge. I think the other thing too that really resonates is having that support system around you, obviously, right? And even with family, obviously, and then you go outside of that with friends and coaches and all this stuff that are there to help. And some people, I'm sure, you know, stepped up big time to help you and your family out, which is, you know, amazing. Now, when you got into Sledge or kind of looked at Sledge and started, okay, maybe this is something that I could kind of pursue. Did you know anything about sledge hockey? Because we were talking a little bit beforehand, and I didn't know much about sledge hockey. I got involved business-wise with a gentleman whose son played sledge hockey and he coached it. And in Todd Sargent and Lane Sargent. And I got on a sledge 4 or 5 times, and man, it is not easy at all. Like just like, especially your first couple times on it, it's crazy. But then watching high level sledge, like the contact, the pace of play, the skill set, I was blown away when I watched it. And I gained a whole new appreciation for sledge hockey and just how unbelievable the sport is. It's amazing. So did you know a lot about it beforehand, or did you just kind of start researching a little bit and looking at it?
Yeah, honestly, I really didn't. But the unique thing is that, you know, for our sport, for the sport of sledge hockey, I truly believe, like, you know, one of the things that really propelled it forward was hosting the Olympics and Paralympics in Vancouver on home soil in 2010, which is all kind of when this really started. And so that was kind of my introduction, was, you know, for the first time seeing it on TV or online. Outside of that, I'd never seen a game live. I'd never watched a game live on TV or streamed it online. And so, you know, kind of, I just started hearing more and more from people. And so, yeah, at that point, I started researching, watching more videos, and, you know, trying to expose myself to it as much as I could. And then, you know, when I was healthy enough to do so, which was essentially, you know, I wasn't ready to get back into sports. I finished chemo in October of 2010, and, you know, the season had just started, you know, before that, and I wasn't healthy enough to get back into it right away. So I essentially had to wait a full year until I really got back, you know, into activity, and I was healthy enough to return to play. And that's when I started. And, you know, I honestly felt the same way when I did start. It was a humbling experience. And and it's so much, it's such a different physical skill set, that, you know, it's so challenging. And I think initially I was frustrated with that. But then after a few ice times, you start to realize, and you start to get excited about that challenge and about learning basically a different way to play a sport that you love. And it was a different opportunity, or new opportunity to be a high performance athlete again. And I think one of the things that I missed most was, during my time away from hockey, wasn't, you know, it was that, you know, craving that competitiveness and that competitive environment. But also, you know, I miss being a part of a team. And so it offered me all of those things. And then it offered an opportunity to do what I always dreamed of, and that was play for Team Canada, or play at the highest level. And then, you know, after, you know, a few months in is when I really started to think, like, oh damn, like the Paralympics are a thing. Like, this is something that I can aspire to. And you know, after, I'd say, yeah, after a month or two, I was like, that was when I really put my head down, and I was like, okay, let's go.
That's cool.
And
That's
so,
awesome.
yeah.
One thing I want to touch on real quick, and we're going to get back to kind of that, the sledge, but you had that year kind of just recovering and probably getting strong and all that kind of stuff. What did you do during that year? Meaning, like, did you start going back to school, and what was that experience like when you got back to school? I'm sure it was very accepting, and people were like really happy to see you and being back involved in just being social again, which is great. But what was it like for you going to school, you know, as a, you know, a year ago, you were a 2-legged able body, moving around, wheeling around, playing sports, to like now you're different, you know, different entry into school, right?
Yeah. Honestly, at the time, I didn't realize how difficult it was. Yeah, like, so especially being from a small town, like, everybody knew my story. Everybody was so supportive and accepting. And so the biggest challenge was myself. Like, I was, you know, there's different reasons for that too. And I definitely became more insecure. I think, you know, when you're in grade 10, grade 11, when you're 15, 16 years old. Those are kind of formative social years, in terms of, your development. And I was no longer, and at that time anyways, I no longer felt like I was myself. I kind of felt like, in a way, like a shell of myself. Like I was just this athletic, competitive guy who, a year before, and now as you said, like I I had lost my leg. I didn't look the same. I wasn't able to do anything the same physically, and so I really kind of sheltered myself from things initially. As refreshing as it was to get back to school, I also really struggled with it, and I didn't know I did. But I struggled with confidence issues, especially initially, and I struggled with the idea, especially being around a lot of my friends. Obviously, a lot of my close friends were also hockey players, also playing AAA, and it really kind of made it difficult for me, not being able to practice alongside them anymore, or compete with them at the same level. I really struggled with that, but at the same time, it was nice to get back in a social setting again. Like I think one of the most difficult things about going through chemotherapy was that I was completely isolated from pretty much everyone at most times. Just with kind of not being healthy enough, that, or kind of at higher risk due to my immune system being depleted. And so, especially the way I am at 27, like I need social interaction. And so I think that was my favorite part about getting back into school. And so, that was really my first year. And I think at that point, as I said, like I didn't realize it was as difficult as it was, and not to say like every single day was a challenge, but I think at that point I started to at least put the pieces of my life back together. And I think what really started to build more confidence for myself was getting back into sport, and that obviously came a year later.
No, man, because I think it's important for kids to hear this too, and parents, because you go from being probably the athlete of the year, the jock, the guy who's hanging out with all his boys all the time, and girls and all that stuff with high school brings, and now all of a sudden you go in, you're the same dude inside, you're the same character guy, probably stronger than you even were before, but you're right, man. Your identity's gone. You're not that jock anymore. You can't go play basketball with the boys after school, or go to your outdoor rink with the guys, or hang out with the girl. It's just, I can't imagine. Exactly. Right. So I think, yeah, you're right. I think it's totally normal, obviously, what you went through, but it's coming out of that. And for young kids, and it's easier said than done, don't get me wrong, but being confident in who you are, it's more the inside than the outside sometimes, even though we identify a lot with what we do on the outside, if we're athletic or whatever that is,
Exactly. And I think that's, I think part of that is it happens naturally with your maturation process, but part of that is a lot of hard work in determining your identity or finding out who you are. So I think it's two things, because I think, we do just naturally find out as we grow older, but at the same time, like, being comfortable with who you are and loving who you are is a lot of hard work, and that it requires a little, looking internally, which is sometimes difficult and uncomfortable to do. But yeah, I think you're exactly right on that.
Now, just to kind of get a bit of a mental picture. So when you go to high school that first year back, you're crutching, like, are you crutches? Are you like, and yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So, so when I first went back, I was walking with one crutch, just because basically, like, so the issues that I had, and I wasn't able to really walk in a prosthetic leg right away because my weight would fluctuate so much with chemotherapy.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it wouldn't always fit. So when I was finally done, I was able to kind of keep my weight more consistent. But at that time, I was still kind of, because I hadn't walked on a prosthetic so much, I was still kind of using one crutch. And so I adjusted pretty quick once I maintained weight. But yeah, like even then, like I remember, you know, trying to go upstairs in the high school, like trying to walk down the hall. And the other thing too, like, you know, the other thing that was crazy was what would happen is, because my weight would fluctuate, especially initially, is like, you know, I'd get so nervous walking in front of people in the high school that I'd start to sweat, and then my leg would fall off, which would make me even more embarrassed. So, you know, just little things like that now I look back on and just like, you know, it is what it is. But at the time when you're 15, 16, like it's difficult.
Imagine. Yeah. And even like, I'm just trying to think of other things that are relatable, because I'm asking these questions because I'm really interested in what it's like. You know, I've met people obviously that have had one leg or used prosthetics, and it's always amazing to me the stuff they can do and how able they are, and how you wouldn't even know, you know what I mean? Like there was one gentleman I met, he had pants on, so I had no idea. And then he told me, yeah, I know I lost my, like, it's insane. Right. But I mean, how awkward is it at the beginning? Cause like anything, you're learning it all over again. And it's like it's an extension of your body, but it's not really. So it's gotta be challenging in that aspect alone, just to be able to make it move the way you want it to and stuff.
It really was like, and it was honestly like, it was really eye-opening to learn the process of how they teach you to walk. And you know, like I really thought it was like a simple process to learn how to walk with prosthetic leg. I thought I'd just get it and, you know, put it on. And you know, we've all walked since we're like 1 year old, right? Like it's kind of like human nature. And so I was amazed at how difficult and how much longer that took than expected. And I remember the first day, like they actually teach you the pattern of how to walk with, you know, without a knee, especially. Like you have to kick your leg forward. So they teach you the pattern before you actually get the leg. And I remember I did that with a physiotherapist on like the bars or whatever for about an hour. Just practice that. I'd kick my leg forward, and you have to drive it back to pull the knee through. And then you have to kick for the knee to be able to bend. You have to kick forward. So we just practiced that for an hour, and I was kind of like, what are we doing? Like, just give me the leg and I'll walk out of here. But the thing that I didn't understand about a prosthetic leg was the additional, or like, you know, being an amputee was like the additional energy expenditure that you use. Like my body used 80% more energy to do daily tasks than the actual person. So so after that first day, I was like, what are we doing? Like, this is super easy. But I went back to the room and slept for like 18 hours. And so like like looking back on the whole process, like I kind of wish I like enjoyed it more and like was more present in learning and like and just like, you know, each different challenge that you have to learn. And it was a weird experience, but
that's
kind of cool at the same time.
That's kind of that young mentality though, right? Like, just let's get through it. Let's just go. Let's get walking again. I want to start like I want to do the things I used to do. So let's just go. Come on, hurry up. And then, but you're right. Then as you get older, you look at it like, oh man, I probably could have sped up my process a lot quicker had I just listened a little bit more and like took it in.
Yeah,
you know? Yeah,
exactly.
Super normal. One thing too, and this is more just to be relatable to other people, but I went through a time in my life, which clearly I'm bald. I got not a lot of hair, so I shaved my head. But going through what you talked about walking in front of people and being embarrassed, like when I started balding, and thanks to all my hockey buddies out there who made me realize I was balding and really hammer that home every day in the locker room, right?
Oh no.
I can't
see the back of my head, but I'm catching up.
Okay, so when I'd walk in a mall or something like that in front of people, without a hat on, my head right away, I'd get nervous, like just like you're talking about when you just start sweating and I mean, worst case, your leg falls off. For me, my hair's not going to fall off, but I would think everybody in the mall was looking at my bald spot, so I was very self-conscious of it. And I was, very aware of how it was annoying. And then as I got older, I'm like, what am I doing, man? Nobody cares if you walk with a limp or if you got, you know what I mean? Like no one's looking, I don't know. So it's like, you said it earlier, and I think this is massive. I want to hammer on is like, it's more internally. This is on me, not on the people walking behind me. You know what I mean? And if they are making fun of my hair or making fun of your leg, then those people have way bigger issues than our hair or our leg, So it's those self-conscious things that I think, now I could care less. I mean, obviously I'm older, it doesn't matter, but when you're going through that process, and you mentioned something earlier about like even being single, and for me being single and being balding, like that's unattractive. That's a notch, a gate, and that's very superficial and super, I'm totally being self-conscious about it. But when you did start getting back into high school and things like that, and I know you mentioned this earlier about like, man, am I gonna have a family? Like, and then this doctor shows you a picture of his kids and his family, and he's got a beautiful family. How was that whole thing getting back into like relationships and meeting girls and things like that? Was it easier than you thought it was going to be, or was it a challenge, or was it a challenge because you made it a challenge?
I think all of the above. So, so it was easier than I thought it was going to be, for sure. And that's like, people are good people, like, and they're more accepting than at the time than I thought they were. And so, but that's not to say that there wasn't, many challenges and like certain instances where like I got shut down or things didn't go my way. Like for instance, just to relate it back to exactly what you said about the mall, like I remember being in London, visiting buddies that were in college, and like a girl literally asked me that exact question, like, why are you limping? And then I told her that I had a prosthetic leg, and she was kind of like, like gave me one of those. And so that was certainly challenging, but again, like, that's so superficial and so shallow that as an older man now, I'm kind of like, well, I'm so glad that girl shut me down. Like,
totally, you dodged the bullet. You dodged the bullet there.
Exactly. And so, like I think many of the challenges were imposed by myself internally, in terms of, like, I probably held myself back in certain situations at certain times, but at the same time, I'm in a great relationship with a great girl now. And luckily I found that confidence within myself, in the next few years of my life. But yeah, certainly I think, I think most people, and the people that you want in your life, the people that support you and will love and care about you, they're accepting and inclusive, and I think the challenges are, most of them are kind of self-inflicted, at least in my experience they were.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, man. I think and I mean, when you meet someone who's confident and funny and has a good personality, and even like you, one leg, two legs, no legs, you're an athletic guy, you know what I mean? I think those to me resonate more than what type of fingers, what type of legs you've got, or what type of hair.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Quick though, I'll share a similar story. So in London, I was new to London. So I'd lived here under 5 years. So I didn't know, I knew London obviously a little bit, but I never lived here. So I was here. It wasn't long. I was single, was downtown at a bar, same kind of like, situation as you probably with your buddies, whatever. And I was going to the bar to grab a drink for a couple of guys, and a buddy of mine was with me, and we're standing at the bar talking, and a girl comes up to me and she starts chatting us or whatever a little bit. And right away, first thing, this is a university student. She's like, and probably, whatever, third, fourth year. It's like, oh, what do you do for a living? I'm like, kind of awkward question, but okay. I'm like, I just looked at her. I'm like, oh, I'm self-employed. And she's like, oh, really? And then next thing she says, like, are you successful? And I looked at her. I'm like, I looked at my buddy, looked at her. I'm like, yeah, I bought a new shirt today. This watch I bought last week. So yeah, I think I'm doing pretty good. Like, what kind of, but going back to your point, like, and I'm not, this isn't stereotyping London, but it's just, sometimes you meet these people and I'm like, get out of here. Like, who are you? And So it's like, it doesn't matter if you've got one leg or
Right.
if tell them where you work. It's just like, some people are just, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
The comments you get, like, are you serious? Like, what is going on here, man? It's unbelievable. So now getting kind of moving forward, obviously out of kind of high school and all that stuff. And now you're kind of part of the Sledge, hockey team. And I mentioned this to you earlier, but I reached out to Todd Sargent because I was having you on, and I knew he knew who you were. I just didn't know if he had any kind of interactions with you. And he said exactly this. He's like, when Tyler first came to Sledge, he was really young, or young as far as like new to the sport. And he said when he first got on the ice, we were all kind of watching just to see like how you'd adapt to it. And he said it was really funny because at the beginning he was like, it was awkward. He was getting frustrated, but he's like, once he figured out the edging on the sledge, and for anybody who doesn't know, sledge hockey is basically a seat with two blades on the bottom, so you have your edges kind of like a hockey skate a little bit, but a little bit wider, and then you've got the front where the feet go, so you're sitting down, kind of on the ice. And it is awkward. You got to really lean and figure out how to like move and cut and turn and stop and all that stuff. But he said it was really interesting to see how quickly, because you're athletic, how quickly you did pick it up, compared to some of the other players. And he said he's very skilled, and his hockey mind is, really like a very smart player, hockey IQ. And obviously that comes from just years of sports, I'm sure, and just playing hockey.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing he did say, and he said, there's no, or I was not shocked at all that he's the captain of the national team, like just with his work ethic. And then he said one thing too that I loved, and this has come out through and through in this podcast, but just how determined you were. Like you had it in your head, I think, like you said, a month or two, and you're like, oh man, I might be able to get there to that, to that Canada jersey, man. If I work my tail off and really buy into this, I might be able to get there. And that's one thing he resonated. He's like, yeah, he's so determined and just works so hard. And he also said like just a really, really good guy, like really respectful and just a nice person to be around. So it was some good, and it was funny because I'd heard your story before. I knew of you. I didn't know you at all, but I'd read a bunch of stuff on you leading up to this, obviously, just to kind of, not that I do a ton of research, but just to check it out, and everything in the articles, and even some of the articles that you've written on yourself and your story, that stuff really resonates. So I want to give you kudos for that, because you don't come across arrogant, you don't come across cocky, but you come across as somebody that just took these challenges. And yeah, I'm sure you struggled with them, and sure it was probably mind blowing at the time, but man, it's really inspirational, man, to somebody's worried about breaking an ankle, or somebody's worried about, spraining a wrist. Like, dude, come on, man. Like, check this guy out. Like, there's nothing to complain about here, So yeah, I thought I wanted to share that with you. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, yeah, like it certainly hasn't all been easy, but I don't know. Like I love, or I've taken up a recent interest in studying Stoic philosophy, and like,
cool.
And so, one of my favorite things, and I think it's kind of like to your point that you just said, but one of my favorite kind of lessons, I guess, from Epictetus, sorry.
Yeah.
But he says, wherever you go, there are your choices. Like a podium in a prison is each a place, one high and the other low. But in either place, your freedom of choice can be maintained if you so wish. And I think like everything's a choice. Like, and I think we're all faced with them. Like it's one or the other. And so I think that's where my determination comes from is, it comes down to small little choices and determining and controlling what, how you react to them, and not letting those define you.
Oh man, 100%. And I think, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I could talk to you all day because I love this. Now you're talking about philosophy. I'd love to pick your brain on some guys you like and girls you like and stuff that you like out there. But I want to kind of end it on this, but how important and influential were your parents on? Because I'm a parent now and I've got young kids, but I can't imagine watching my son or daughter go through, and I know I'm sure if we talk to your parents right now, they're like, we just put our work boots on and got through it. Like, probably there's no like plan or no schedule on how they did it, but just how influential were they on you? Just even like going back to school, dealing with the stuff that you've dealt with, dealing with the diagnosis, all that stuff. Like, they had to have been, or them or somebody else, but and your, I think you've got a sister as well, correct?
Yeah. I have an older sister.
So how, cause that's, as a parent, I can't imagine, just in keeping
honestly,
you confident and keeping you positive,
honestly, like thinking about it, like kind of makes me emotional. Cause like, they're so unbelievable. I remember like so, even my childhood, like just in terms of being supportive parents, like come from probably lower middle class family. Like it was a challenge for my parents to afford to allow me to play AAA hockey and drive across the province. And it wasn't just an easy decision to throw money at that. And I actually, I wanted to play AAA my major Adam year, and financially we couldn't make it work. And so, like my parents always, and for myself and my sister, and I hope they don't mind that I'm saying that. I don't know why they would, but like, they always made such an effort to give us the opportunity to do what we wanted or what we love. And so like that alone, I'm forever grateful for, because, it allowed me to find my passion in a sport that is really now, as an adult man, it's been my career, and hopefully will for years into the future.
Can I pause you for one sec though? So going back to that real quick, because did your parents get you involved in the process? Meaning, because I come from a middle to lower class family as well. Like the same thing with 3 kids, all played hockey. My parents did everything they could to provide for us, but my parents made us well aware of the cost of a hockey stick. And if I didn't like the curve on the stick, it was like, well, tough. That's your stick. Yeah. That's what you're using. So like, did your parents like bring you and your sister in the fold on that a little bit, as far as like, because you seem like a really, I know you're older now, but I mean, you seem like, and even what I've heard of you, but someone who just appreciates and you have an understanding of that, because some kids, it as well as I do, we played with them. Like they'll break a stick in the locker room because they don't like it and make their dad go buy them another one, and that was never an option for me. Like
me either. And, I remember literally one of my favorite Christmas gifts ever. And I think it might be, one of the only times that, that my parents bought me a stick. The others I'd cut grass for, and, go and buy myself. Cause they like crazy expensive. But I got one for Christmas one year, and that was like probably one of my favorite Christmas gifts ever.
Awesome.
But yeah, like they did involve me in that process, and make me aware of the cost of playing, and associated with traveling, and hotels, etc. And I remember, like, I was as I said, like, I went and tried out and made the team in Lambton in my major Adam year, and I remember crying to my parents in the kitchen when they said, like, we can't do it this year. We can't make it work. Wait till next year, and we will. But I remember being in tears, like so devastated, and not fully understanding. But yeah, like just to answer your question, like because of that, like I was aware of the kind of the burden, and they would never say it was a burden, but the financial burden that it put on them.
Yeah. No, and I think like that's the thing with some, like I love that. I love hearing that, number one, but I think young, and I mean, I major Adam, you're 10 years old, 11 years old, but I think that even at 8, 9, 10, they should have, they're not going to comprehend it. You didn't comprehend it fully, clearly, but kids need to be able to hear no, and need to understand why it's a no, or why we can't do this, or no, you're not doing that because you didn't do your homework or whatever it is. But I think we need to do more of that, and just have players appreciate, like when you weren't able to play AAA, you made the team, like good for you. That's unbelievable. And then your parents like, sorry, like we can't afford it. And it's going to be too much time away, and we just can't leave work that much, whatever the reasons are. How much hungrier were you the next year to be like, if I get the opportunity, mom and dad say, yeah, like I'm all in, man. And I'll cut grass all summer at 12 years old to make sure I can help out or whatever, like I'm sure it gave you that a little bit of inner drive, not even just for hockey, but just for life. Like if you want something, you got to work for it.
Yeah. That's actually a great point. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure it did, because, and I know it did, because I mean, I remember how disappointing that was. And then, for the next year of my life, like all that was on my mind was like, okay, I need to prepare for for when I do get that opportunity. And yeah, like minor PE, I remember and then like I remember adjusting to that level pretty quick. And that's probably why.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Totally. No, definitely. Now, and I didn't mean to steal your parents' thunder because I know I was talking about them being super supportive and stuff. And if you want to touch a little bit more on it, but like, I can't imagine. The one thing I'm really, really interested in, and you can answer, you don't have to take long on it, but it's just them and some of the advice they gave you going back to high school, or some of those, I'm sure you had some long conversations with them or your sister about, man, this sucks. Like, I don't fit in with the boys anymore. I can't go, I'm sure there was like some situations like that came up that you're like, man, how do I deal with this?
I mean, I think so I think the biggest challenge too, initially for me was like I internalized a lot up until probably the end of high school. I internalized a lot of how I was feeling. Just I mean, at that time, like I think there's been a lot of advancements within sports and particularly like men's sports, and men in general. Just speaking up about how they're feeling. So at that time I was hesitant to ever say anything to them. But then again, when I became comfortable enough to do so, like, yeah, I've had a lot of great conversations with my parents, even in recent years, where and I think back to one, like, particularly like after I learned I was going to have my amputation, I was obviously questioning everything, and at the time, like, my parents don't have the answers to everything either, but I do remember like them basically saying what I just said and giving me that advice, is that I have the choice of how I want to react to this. Like, it can, I can either let it define me in a way that that kind of holds me back in life, or I can find a way to help it propel me forward, and that choice is really up to me. And I remember, like, I mentioned, how much my mom stressed with education at the time, and like my mom really encouraged me to explore new things academically, and I think she really helped me become a much better student, a much better person and more well-rounded, like, outside of life, outside of hockey.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is, like, both with the experience that I was going through, and who my mom is, at the core of who she is. She's one of the most generous, giving people that I know. And so one of the things that she really helped me find out about myself is we share those things as well. And so my mom helped me, like, understand the importance of paying it forward through everything. And then my dad was always there to offer me help in terms of, especially, like, as much as he helped me grow as a hockey player in person as a young kid, he also helped me overcome the hurdles that I faced when I started to play sledge hockey. So I mean, I could honestly go all day, because, like, there's little things that I could nitpick of everything that they've done for me. But I mean, I feel very grateful and fortunate that like, especially for a parent, I think it was probably more difficult on them than it was on me, and I have so much respect for that, because like, when I reflect on it, I probably, as a teenager, wasn't present for most of it, whereas an adult, you're far more present and aware of what's going on, and with so much more responsibility and external factors outside of that. And I have so much gratitude and love and respect for what they've done for me, and my sister. It's incredible.
No, that's amazing, man. I love hearing that. Number one, I think it's a really cool message too. And your parents sound like unbelievable people. And I think even even having that tough conversation of like, listen, buddy, you can, feel sorry for yourself. You can, oh, poor me, I've only got one leg. That's, that's one way to go. Or we help you through this no matter which way you decide, or you decide to, hey, let's turn this into a positive. Let's carry on. And I think those are, it's it goes back and just trying to relate this for other people going through stuff, but your kid gets cut from a minor hockey team or a soccer team or whatever that is, maybe you weren't good enough and maybe these are the reasons why. Let's work on this stuff. Let's make a positive out of this. Let's make this a good, because I'm sure when you look back right now on what's going on with you, are those some of the more like formidable years of your life, meaning some of those experiences that you went through really structured and made kind of the person that you are today? I think everybody goes through experiences that are going to harden you or soften you or turn you into who you are. And I think a lot of times how you come out of those experiences or how it formulates who you really are. Right. And when you look back on it now, are you kind of like, not that it's, I'm not for 1 minute saying like, oh, good, I'm glad this happened, because I don't trust me, but I'm sure you look at it sometimes, you're like, man, I really grew a lot from some of these experiences.
Believe me, that I 100% agree. And like, that's another one of the worst and best experiences of my life was losing a gold medal in the Paralympics in Pyeongchang. And the reason I say, like, obviously the worst because of the result, but as how old was I at that time? 24, 25-year-old. It really allowed me to take a step back, and it offered, following that loss, it offered so many challenges in my own personal life that ended up propelling me forward. But obviously, by choice. And then again, I think with the pandemic, like, we actually just had a team call today, and our manager made a good point. Like, it's difficult to say that this pandemic is a blessing because so many people have endured hardship and loss and et cetera, et cetera. But just in my own personal life, like, or within our team, like we said, when this started, we said, this is going to be the reason why we win a gold medal. This pandemic is going to be the reason why we win a gold medal, not the reason why not.
Yeah.
And so I think like there's so much value in that perspective and having that perception of what you're dealing with or how you view the challenges that you face. And so, one of the things that we've adopted is winning the weight. And so, like, the whole world is on pause. So many kids across the country, and even our team, like, we haven't played a game in 13 months or whatever it is. But like, how do we come out of this better, improved? How do we win the weight, and how do we use this as a reason why? I probably got off topic there, but yeah, I think like many of the challenges that we face are formidable, like as long as we use that opportunity.
Yeah, and I think it's how you tackle them. Number one, whether you do it poorly or correctly or stoically, that doesn't matter. But then being able to look back on and be like, I really messed that one up. I probably should have went the other way there. And then, hey man, I did really good on this. Maybe I can repeat this and come across something else like this. So I think it is. Yeah, it's crazy. And obviously you've had, your fair share of obviously events in your life that have, aside from just even competition alone, but just a lot of the stuff obviously that's happening health wise and stuff. Now being an Olympic athlete in Canada, just real quick, I kind of want to wrap up with a couple of quick questions, because this is territory that a lot of people in Canada don't really know, but being a carded Olympic athlete in Canada, you are kind of on a bit of a stipend or a bit of called a small salary, basically, to help with living and training and all that kind of stuff. And then is there work on the side, like for you as well? Is there something else that you're doing kind of passionately or for a job or things like that?
Yeah. So exactly. Like as athletes, as amateur athletes, we're funded by Sport Canada. And so every athlete is given the exact same base salary. And so, yeah, like as you said, like that alone, I mean, doesn't, you know, especially living in the second most expensive city in Canada,
You're
which
probably
is
not
where
going to
we live,
retire on it.
which is where we live and train. To be quite honest, I wouldn't even be able to, based on that salary, I wouldn't even be able to afford my monthly rent every year. In addition to, you know, my other bills and expenses. So I have myself and basically every other athlete. You do work on the side, and so I actually work for. Well, I mean, at this point in time, we're not doing a whole lot in the community, but I work for a nonprofit called All Sports All People. And so what we do is we offer inclusive sports programs, primarily in the York and Simcoe regions. And so slowly, well, I mean, we were expanding into Toronto and hopefully other places in Ontario. And understandably, that's kind of put on hold with what we're able to do in the community during the pandemic. But we offer inclusive sports programs primarily through sledge hockey, wheelchair basketball. But I've also done adaptive cycling. I've done adaptive water polo, whatever it is. Cool. And so that's what I do for work. And then I'm fortunate to have two primary sponsors, CCM and RBC, that kind of help me live and train in where I do. And then in addition to that, like I'm trying to do more and more like philanthropic work in the community. You know, I just did a 25K skate for the Terry Fox Foundation.
I saw that. Awesome.
We raised over $30,000. So that's year one. And so, you know, and then, you know, just other things. Like I wish the opportunity to be on the ice with kids was more readily available at this point. But at the same time, like, you know, when that opportunity does arise, I'm excited to get back in the community and you know, start to give back to grassroots sports more. But yeah, that's kind of awesome, the reality of Olympic and Paralympic athletes is, yeah, life, you know, even in a, you know, at this time, life has been pretty busy, but you know, I hope to one day get to a place where, you know, for a couple of years of my career, I can just focus specifically on hockey and not work.
yeah, definitely. Now, how much longer do you see yourself playing? Like the previous captain that you guys had was there for quite a while, correct?
Yeah. And so what actually happened there is he actually, after Pyeongchang, he stepped away for a year, was considering retirement and you know, got married, hasn't started a family yet, but was you know, kind of missed the game, and so ended up coming back. But you know, and you know, selflessly, at that time our staff had, you know, decided that I guess they were going to name me captain, and so he's a great friend and mentor of mine, but he's now a teammate again, awesome. and has selflessly kind of passed over that role to me, which is, you know, amazing in itself. But yeah, so I think he's been around for 15 years now or so. Cool. But to answer your question, like, they're gonna have to drag me out of the ring.
I love it.
Like, and you know, to be quite honest, like I think about this sometimes, and maybe I shouldn't, because I'm looking too far ahead. But like, you know, I don't want to be a guy that wins a gold medal and wants to like step away when you know, things are high and I'm leaving on a good note. Like, I want to literally be dragged out of the ring. I want to play hockey into, like, this is what I love to do. I want to play hockey until I can't anymore. You know, I don't necessarily, and you know, I respect that some people like want to leave on good terms, on their own terms, but like I literally will need to be dragged away from this team. Yeah, I love, and that's, you know, that's the way I feel right now. So I hope I can play till I'm 38.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
Or 40 or 50, however old.
Or or you'll have a couple kids, get married, and that's going to change everything.
Well, yeah, that too. I mean,
Yeah, I'm kidding.
I haven't reached that yet, which may change my mind. Who knows?
No, hopefully not. You just gotta find and it sounds like you got a great girlfriend now, but someone that gets you and gets what makes you tick, and and then you can play as long as you want for sure. As long as you're home once in a while for bedtime and get to bed, and then you're good.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, who knows what are, I don't know what, I mean, I have so much respect for, all people that have kids, but like something that I can relate to anyways, like people on our team who have kids and are able to still, get up and train and do whatever they do. Jeez. Like sometimes I could be a moody guy. Like when I don't get my sleep, like look out, and like, having the ability to just turn that off and show up and work hard is, it's going to be an adjustment when I get to that point in my life.
Yeah. All I can say is good luck.
Oh.
Well, listen, buddy, this was awesome, man. Like I said, I could do this, I mean, all day. I really appreciate coming on. I mean, this is really, really cool to hear your story. And yeah, I've learned a ton through this, man. It's been really, really cool. So thank you very much. And man, really, really, amazing to be able to talk to Captain Canada here, who's representing Canada. And no, it's awesome. It's really cool because on a lot of other teams, you're going to have captains replaced every couple of years or whatever it is, right? Especially when you think of, when I think of like the men's Olympic team, you don't know who's going to be there. You have an idea, but who knows, right? Whereas, with you guys, you kind of have that stable of guys that are working together, training together. I think it's really, really cool. And to be, part of the leadership group on that is awesome. And it's quite an honor. So congrats on that. And yeah, I love your story, man.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate you having me on. I had a great time. Love just having the opportunity to chat. But thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, it was really fun. So yeah, buddy, and best of luck with training and stuff. And yeah, we'll be in touch for sure.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. Sounds good.
To kind of raise that bar.
That extra gear, the first 3 steps.
Huge strides in the performance.
That I might not be the player I am today.